Unchain my praise.
Hi, my name is Danny Plett. My personal worship journey has been an incredible, multifaceted road trip. It's been fraught with many arid desert-like stretches. It's also contained some rich and lush geographies and landscapes. It's been an adventure that has taken me to many different places and countries in the world where I've learned and experienced a great variety of wonderful and fascinating things about worship. Certain stretches on this highway I've experienced as back-breaking, hard labor, when my attempts at worship seemed forced or contrived and inauthentic. I've experienced exhaustion and sometimes even deep disappointment, so potent that I didn't have the strength or the joy to try anymore, and my worship was given out of sheer obedience. And other stretches when I caught brief glimpses and experienced short moments of revelation leading to times of effortless worship where I connected with God in a way that seemed flowing and natural. And then again, other times on the trip when I truly felt like a worn-out gold prospector working in a useless, dark, and dusty mine, digging for that elusive gold that just didn't exist. Then, thankfully and refreshingly, I longed for oasis on the long odyssey that yielded incredibly beautiful and even euphoric times of beauty and rest when my worship would surge and soar effortlessly to the Father, who I knew was there, who I knew loved me passionately, and I knew I loved Him. Being the child of a pastor, father, and a singer mother, I have from my earliest memories been immersed in the church and in a home where we made or listened to music from morning to night. Some of my earliest memories are of my mom and dad singing at the piano, or of gospel LPs, records being played on our old record player, or of us singing in the car while doing our chores, or the family preparing a song for church, or Christmas family gatherings at our grandparents' house. There were times in my earlier years that I had an uneasy and somewhat tense relationship with church. I found myself questioning many of our church's traditions and practices. As a child and a teenager, I found the music in the church mostly lackluster and downright boring at times. I saw the use of music in our services as more of a psychological tool that the church used to move the congregation from one emotional mood to another. I saw it as a thing that was more functional than spiritual. The songs we sang were, in most cases, quite old, with lyrics that at times seemed actually kind of weird. C.S. Lewis felt the same when he first became a Christian and he started going to church. He wrote, "I disliked very much the church's hymns, which I considered to be fifth-rate poems set to sixth-rate music. I knew the songs were about God, but the texts were formulated in such a way that I found them hard to understand. I had a better relationship with the songs we sang in the summer holidays at the daily vacation Bible school that our church ran every summer. I enjoyed those times of singing. The melodies were catchier, with words that left a positive impression on me. And as a teenager, I enjoyed singing in the church's choir, believe it or not. I enjoyed learning to sight read, and the songs we sang were interesting. I found it challenging and loved the sound of the four-part harmonies. But the congregational songs we sang in the Sunday services and the way we sang them were off-putting to me. I grew to be rather cynical in my attitude regarding church music. The day I discovered contemporary Christian music was really memorable to me. This was music that was exciting and passionate and engaging. Andre Crouch and Keith Green were two influential artists that opened up this world of music to me. When I was 12, I remember using my small allowance to buy my very first LP. It was an Andre Crouch album. A few years later, I discovered Keith Green, and at about that time, I began to play and sing and compose songs on my own. These two artists were extremely influential for me, and much of my earlier songwriting reflected this. At 21, I was able to record my first album of original songs, and I've had the privilege of my dream of having a career as a singer-songwriter come true. In the past 15 to 20 years, my understanding of worship has grown deeper and deeper. I've learned something of the spiritual disciplines, and my experiences with mental illness have forced me to become more disciplined in my relationship to God. The care of my body and what I allow to lead and speak into my soul. The biblical David has also become a mentor, and in German we say Vorbild for me. Over and over again, I find myself identifying with him as a man and an artist. The songs that I've written in these past 15 years have been, for the most part, worship songs based on my personal experiences, fears, rejoicing, prayers, and laments. What does the word worship even mean? The word worship has come to be broadly, but I think falsely understood to refer to a style or category of music, much like the word gospel has come to be widely identified with the category of music internationally known as gospel music. Let's look at a simple dictionary definition of the word worship. As a noun, the dictionary defines worship as the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for God. Some synonyms for the word worship as a noun would be reverence, adoration, devotion, praise, thanksgiving, glorification, or exaltation. As an action, worship is the expression of reverence and adoration for God. Some synonyms for the word worship as a verb would be revere, reverence, venerate, praise, adore, bow down before, exalt, and glorify. God is worshipped when he is appealed to, when he's elevated, when he's loved and praised and adored. I can worship God with my body, with my spirit, with actions, with the words I say or the thoughts I have, through my activities or the work I do, relationships, the values I have, or the principles or the life principles I espouse. God can be worshipped by me personally, but also in groups with others. He can be worshipped in many different ways, in countless settings and locations, and in every part of life, consciously and unconsciously. One of my most powerful worship experiences was a time when I was out running, close to the village of Holzen, where we lived for many years in the southwest corner of Germany, close to the Swiss and the French borders. I was running, but I slowly became conscious of God's presence. I began telling him how I felt about him, and I began to powerfully sense and feel his presence and his great love for me. Then words of thanks and praise to God went through my mind and out of my mouth. And as is so often the case when encountering God, tears came. I ran in the strength of his love and the joy of his presence, worshiping him. The following quote shows us that the worship of God is much more than our formal prayers or singing of songs or reciting scriptures. The Apostle Paul writes, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." Presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice to God is an all-encompassing act of worship. This is the worship of God that involves everything. Our bodies, hearts, our minds, and all of our life. Henry Nouwen said it really well when he wrote, "Perhaps nothing helps us make the movement from our little selves to a larger world when remembering God in gratitude. Such a perspective puts God in view of all of life, not just in the moments we set aside for worship or spiritual disciplines.